Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Disney Ranked. We're here again, believe it or not. Um, yeah. So we did Pixar, we did Disney, and now we're doing Marvel. I'm your host Lewis, and joining us is of course Amber. Welcome back.
Hi. We always come back even when we don't seem like we're gonna come back. And I'm excited for this list. Out of the big four, I've always been the biggest Marvel fan, and I
Yeah,
have a lot of interesting things to say because recently they've been quite disappointing. And so we will talk about how I've been feeling about them lately.
yeah. I wanna start with a question actually before we get into the ranking. In
Sure.
hindsight, do you believe the MCU should have ended with Endgame?
See, it's interesting because I don't think so, no, because at the end of the day, I mean, there's so many Marvel characters and so many stories and so many villains. Thanos is not the only villain worthwhile, and the Avengers are not the only heroes worth like making several movies about. However, it really just comes down to what they've been doing, and they've not been taking the opportunities or what the stories that they can be. They just haven't been doing a good job lately. There's no plan. They don't know how, there's nothing leading up to the next Avengers movie. They've just been kind of tripping over themselves and been shooting themselves in the foot. There are
Yeah,
so many stories, and I don't think it should have ended at Endgame because there's so many great characters that we can still expand upon. But the way they've been doing it, it's not been good. So I don't think
yeah,
it should have been over. I just think they need a reform. I don't think a full on reboot. They just need to do better.
yeah. I think you've hit the nail on the head. In all honesty, I think like like you said, it's been the delivery of these projects. It's been kind of the spreading themselves so thin, trying to tick off everything and trying to do so much that in the end it's been more lackluster than not.
Exactly. I agree.
So on this list, just to clarify, there's 34 films. So we are including the Sony Marvel films and the new Deadpool and Wolverine because they're all kind of MCU films, but nothing else. 34 films. None of the TV shows because we've not watched them in all of them.
It's been hard to keep up. I mean, it's funny because I if anything, like the movies have been kind of giving us kind of the same quality, but I've actually still kept up with all the movies. The TV shows, I can't say I have. They've been very unwatchable, is my take.
Yeah. So we'll start with our bottom film because there is 34 to get through, so we'll probably be here all night. So the
Yeah.
first film, I'll start first. We'll alternate. In last place, I hate to put something at the bottom, but this might not be the worst MCU film, but it's the MCU film that annoys me the most. I've gone for Thor: Love and Thunder.
Ooh, damn. Okay, okay. I can't say I blame you, but why don't you explain yourself?
Do you want to say what you've got as well?
Sure. By the way, I have been collecting these movies for the past since I was 10 years old. And so I have every single Blu-ray and DVD of every Marvel movie except for like three of them. So if I don't have it, it's pretty obvious why. But I got the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, I can see where you're going with that. Do you want me to explain mine first?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
The reason I put Fall and Thunder last is because it frustrates me, this film. It's so annoying because you've got a film with a lot of really good stuff going on there. You've got a very serious cancer plotline. You've got really serious storylines about like abduction of children and like one of the most serious and well casted villains you've got in the whole of the MCU. And then you sort of chuck in just the worst tonal whiplash of any MCU film in terms of it's all over the place, and I feel like Taika Waititi, whereas in Ragnarok it was controlled and it was to a degree. In this, it's just all over the place, and it's hard to kind of take it seriously and to even take these really serious established parts because you're just so disappointed and scratching your head because every time there's a good bit, you're just ruined by like screaming goats or something, and it's so annoying.
Yeah, I'll talk more about Love and Thunder when I get to it. And I agree with you when it comes to the most annoying. And I will say it is I mean, no, we'll get to it when we get to it, but I agree that it is ungodly annoying. And but I gotta be honest. I mean, reason why I put The Incredible Hulk at the bottom, this movie, ever since I first got into Marvel, which was like where I was like literally in love with every single movie, and I mean even Thor: The Dark World, I was in love with. This never hit me right. I never got into it. I would watch this movie at 2 p.m. and still find a way to fall asleep. This is probably the blandest Marvel movie. I It's so forgettable. I've seen this movie like this was at a time where I would watch every Marvel movie at least 3 or 4 times. I've seen this movie multiple times and I just never understood why it got made. And the way that it was, like, okay, there's some interesting fight scenes, like I guess, like I don't hate Abomination,
Don't even know his
and
name.
it's just Abomination. I knew it. It's not worth remembering.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is easily the most. This isn't even the movie I've seen the least amount of times, and yet it's the most forgettable movie to me, and not a movie I would rather rewatch any of these movies except for this because I can't even sit through it. It's just I can't. And it's always been at the bottom, and they're gonna have to make a damn bad movie. This is not a challenge. I don't want them to, but for it to be worse than The
Yeah.
Incredible Hulk, they'll have to
I
really
think
try.
it almost doesn't even feel like a Marvel film because it was so early on. It was so different tonally. It's like it almost doesn't count for me.
Yeah, well, this was made before Disney bought Marvel. This was the last Marvel movie made before Disney bought
Yeah,
Marvel,
that's
and
right.
it's the one time Disney actually saved something.
Okay, so I'll let you go next with 33rd.
I'm just gonna put this down here. Oh yeah. Okay. Another okay, I don't like this movie either, but I still have Blu-ray. Captain Marvel.
Yep, it's low on most people's list. I have gone for the Dark World, which my reasoning, it's so boring. That's about it, really. Right.
I mean, hey man, I'll get to it. It's coming up soon. I'll just tell you that. But this movie, if we're gonna talk about boring, here you go. I mean, could you imagine like we just came off of Infinity War and then they're like, here you go, here's Captain Marvel. What? It's just I don't like I just this is no hate against Brie Larson because they got a damn good actress to play Captain Marvel, but she's so blank face and just so uninteresting that it makes the whole movie uninteresting. If I don't care about the main character, why am I going to care about the rest of the movie? And I don't. I just don't care about the movie. Like I there's nothing interesting about it. They made like Nick Fury had some good moments in it, but the de-aging they did on him, man, it didn't even look like Nick Fury. And I just it's like watching just blandness. Like at least unlike Incredible Hulk, I actually remember some scenes in this movie, but it's pretty much on the same level as bland. I just like you could show this movie to me at like 2 p.m. and I'd probably fall asleep.
You reusing the same analogy I see there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, with Captain Marvel, I'll talk about it more when I get to it, but I'm not too indifferent with you. I've got it a little bit higher, but with me for the Dark World, and I kind of joked earlier and saying it's just boring, but it's kind of like the Cars 2 of Marvel. It's like it's always been that one which, from the beginning, was always a black sheep, always the one near the bottom of everyone's list because it's tonally all over the place. It doesn't have a good climax. Loki's barely even in it, really. Like
Mm.
Jane and Thor, I just don't care about them in this one. It's just nothing really worked. The villain's probably the most boring villain in the entire MCU.
Yeah. It's definitely up there. There are some like this is one thing that I was not thinking about like when ranking my movies was the villains because if you notice the MCU has a record of having some of the most boring uninteresting villains,
It's so
but
true.
I wasn't really letting that kind of like make my list because I'm like, damn, like then like a great movie that I have in top five, if I thought about the villain, I would not be in top five. And so I just gotta have to ignore it sometimes. But then it just gets to the times where it's like especially if they devote. I just rewatched The Dark World and I'll talk about it more when I get to it. But yeah, that villain like not only did it have like so much screen time, but every time he was on screen, I was just like get off my screen. You are nothing. Like, oh, it was so bad.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you on that one. We'll hear what you think about it, and based on how you talked about the film, I think it's coming up soon. 32nd for me, I think this. I hope this is low on your list as well. I've gone for The Eternals.
is the same on my list, and I don't even have the DVD of that movie because unlike the bottom two, this movie made me mad. This I wouldn't pay money for this movie. This movie made me so mad.
Okay, I'm not as passionate about the Eternal. I actually didn't watch the Eternals for so long because everyone said it was terrible. I watched it a few months ago, and it's one of those where like, I can see what they were trying to do, but there's too much, there's too many characters, too many ideas, too much one film. If it was a series or maybe a franchise more, they could have done more. There's so much stuff that doesn't work in it, and I'll let you talk more because you seem annoyed at this.
Yes. This movie just made me mad. And the reason why it made me mad is because I it kind of felt like they were trying to like demean the Avengers or that they were trying to like Marvel felt so cocky and so full of themselves that they were like, man, we're on top of the world. You know, we can rehash the Avengers. We can make a whole new Avengers starting at the Avengers movie. So we're gonna have like 8 or 9 new characters that you've never even heard of before. The Eternals weren't even that popular of a comic character. So even people who are obsessed with the comics don't even know who the Eternals are really. And we're gonna make an Avengers length movie with an Avengers budget, more characters. There are like twice the amount of characters in the first Avengers movie, and you know nothing. And then they were like, and that's that. And then you're just watching it, and you're like, what am I watching? And now then they have the audacity to be like, the Avengers, like we could have gotten rid of Thanos in a heartbeat. Then why weren't you there? I'll tell you why you weren't there because nobody cares about you. Nobody even thought of you when Avengers Endgame was happening, and nobody wanted to, quite frankly. And after this movie, I don't want there to be a sequel. I don't like these characters. I don't care for these characters. And while like it's not my bottom, just because like I will admit there are some interesting ideas in here, and certain characters I think could probably like if they had like their own little movie, I think would be a solid movie.
There's
There's
too many
some
of them. That's the problem.
way too many, way too many. There's some decent ideas in Eternals, but the way that it was executed and the way that they just threw it at us like just a few years after Endgame and be like, "Ha, there's our new Earth, world's mightiest heroes." Throw it in the trash. No one wants it. Like this is ridiculous. And if you actually wanted this, build them up better. Don't just introduce them in an Avengers level movie. That would never work. That's what DC did, and
I was
that's
gonna
why James
bring that
Gunn's
in.
shooting.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But like it
And
can be
so
done when you introduce an ensemble in one film. Guardians of the Galaxy did that, but they made you actually care for the characters and they knew how many to have and what to do with it, and they had a plan there. With Eternals, didn't feel like it really had much of a plan going on.
yeah, and not to mention they didn't throw Guardians of the Galaxy into a nuclear level threat, you know?
Yeah,
Like they built them up, you know? And very good point. Very good point. They knew how many characters to have. They knew how to introduce them. And yeah, we actually have more Guardians, but they knew to give us time to like the first couple and then bring in some new ones and have them interact. They just did it so because that's a good point. I mean, that's a fair comparison that they've done group films before where that was their first time hearing about them and they did it right. Just Eternals did not do it right.
Eternals should have been a trilogy where, or it should have been like a season or a show with multiple seasons to build this world, to build this character, but they didn't do that. But let's move on because we don't know this one's crap. 31st, what have you got?
I actually, this is another one I don't have. There are 3 Marvel movies I do not have the DVD for, and this is the second one. And that is another movie that actually made me mad. And this was Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
Ah, yeah. I don't blame you. I've got Quantumania a little bit higher than this. I've gone for one you've already mentioned, the Incredible Hulk, and just I'll talk first because you've already brought this up.
Yep.
This kind of feels like the black sheep of the MCU in a lot of senses because it's like okay, it's Edward Norton as the Hulk, not Mark Ruffalo. It's tonally very different to what you'd later get in the MCU. It's just a not very necessary film to watch. Like, there's 34 films now, all these shows. If someone's new going into it and they're saying, what films should I skip? This is a top tier one to skip because nothing really happens. No, yeah, you get Abomination. He's brought back, I think, in She-Hulk later on, but like apart from that, you don't. It's not relevant. Nothing really comes up again. It's just a pretty boring film, and I agree with you. And I think sometimes being boring is worse than being bad because at least we can laugh at something like Love and Thunder. You could say.
Oh yeah. Oh, I've always said that a bad film is better than a boring film. And but no, Quantumania just made me so upset because I was Ant-Man's biggest defender, and I still am. I think the first two Ant-Man movies are solid movies. And I don't like it when people don't like when trash on them just because they're little movies or because they don't think it's that funny. I don't think they're both tightly written films, and we will get to them when we get to them on my list, but I love those movies. Ant-Man Quantumania was just it pissed me off because it proved everyone who didn't like Ant-Man right because then they just made a terrible Ant-Man movie. They forgot that Ant-Man what makes Ant-Man so good and what made the movie so good is that they again, same thing with Eternals. They didn't throw them into a nuclear level like threat. They kept them small, simple movies. Quantumania threw that out the window. And not only did they try to make an Avengers level film for fucking Ant-Man, it was messy. They didn't know what to do. It felt like a CGI fest. The characters were like washed of all their charm and humor. Nothing was really that funny, and nothing was interesting. I didn't like the way that they like Kang was an interesting character, and like we can talk about him a bit more, but when you get to Quantumania, because I believe that's one of your saving graces of the movie. But he just wasn't enough to save the movie for me. And Kang in general, this is a different topic, but it's kind of upsetting because we're never going to see Kang again. And that was one of the reasons why it took me so long to finish Loki, is because I knew that Kang was going to be a big character. And I felt like I was just
Yeah.
wasting my time. I felt like I was just wasting my time because we're not seeing him again. And they're spending so much time on this character who I thought was going to be an interesting, cool character just for him to go absolutely nowhere because of what the fuck is happening with the real actor. But just Quantumania was just a mess. And it was one of those movies I was just like, damn, this is what you did to Ant-Man. Like shame on you. Shame on you.
Yeah, I mean, with Kang, we'll talk about it later, but one of my big issues with the film is how easily they beat Kang when he's meant to be the new big bad of the
Yep.
MCU, and he's beaten by Ant-Man and the Wasp and his daughter, who, in the scale of like heroes in the MCU, when it comes to powers, they're like a DC tier power. Like, why do we need the cosmic characters when you can beat him like this? But yeah, I share a lot of your criticism, but I have put it a bit higher. But I do have a lot of issues with it, and you do bring up fair points. Maybe I have put it a bit high, to be honest. Right, I had Incredible Hulk. Moving on. 20th now. I've gone
30th.
with. We're on 20th, right?
30th.
Oh, 30th, sorry. 30th, I have gone with the original four. What have you
Same
got?
here.
Oh, wow.
Same.
That's two agreements. That's probably more than we had in either the Disney or Pixar one, so I think we're doing alright so far. Um, you can talk about four first this time.
If y'all are keeping track, I actually put this lower than the Dark World. And I will talk about the Dark World when I get to the Dark World. But I gotta be honest. I
Don't
gotta
tell me
be
you're
honest.
defending for the Dark World.
I'm not gonna defend it, but I will talk a little bit about it. But Thor 1, I actually think is the weaker movie just because I think it is more boring. Because here's my thing with Thor 1. When you think Thor, you're so because think about it, this was the fourth Marvel movie that came out. The previous three had been the Incredible Hulk and the first two Iron Mans, and that had been taking place on Earth. The Avengers goes beyond that, obviously, like Guardians, Thor, some of the other characters that are introduced later. Thor is a god. Thor belongs in Asgard. When we found out that we were getting a Thor movie, we're like, hell yeah, let's go to Asgard. Let's switch this up for the MCU. Let's see something else. Oh, he's gonna be in New Mexico the whole time. Oh, it's a fish out of water where he falls in love with Natalie Portman. That is boring. This movie is so boring.
uh,
And it's such a waste because we saw Asgard for like 20 minutes of this movie. And for what we saw, it was cool. But that we barely saw it. And Odin was barely a thing. Loki was barely a threat. Like, this is Loki's worst movie. And Loki's one of my favorite characters. We will talk about Loki. In this movie, this is not his movie. And he couldn't save this movie. And
yeah.
it felt like a tease. That's what this movie felt like. And
I'll
it ticked
give
me off.
four this because I've also got it here. I think the casting is fantastic. You know, Chris Hemsworth
Oh,
and Tom Hiddleston, they weren't these big names that they are now when they were found. So I always give it that. But I agree with you. It's boring. It's generic. It's taking a concept and not using it to its full potential. It's just really
yeah.
disappointing.
Oh yeah, easily.
So let's get on
Okay.
to 29th.
Am I the one saying it first, or did I say the last one first?
I said the last one first, so it's your turn.
All right. This is where we got the Dark World. Just barely better than the first Thor, and I'll explain why. But
Okay,
what's your
I've
20
got
minutes?
another one that you brought up before, Captain Marvel. So I'll talk about Captain Marvel first, just 'cause you've already brought it up again. For me with Captain Marvel, it the worst part about the film, and we did an episode on this one way back, and I still hold the same view, that the worst part about Captain Marvel is the titular character of Captain Marvel. She's told in the film like she's got amnesia, which is a stupid thing to do because she can't emote, she has no personality, you have no idea who she is as a person, and it's just so underwhelming. There's some okay and stuff in it, like kind of the backstory of Maria is okay, kind of the scroll stuff is okay, but it sort of isn't expanded on as much. The villain, I'm really annoyed because they wasted Jude Law in such a really pointless role, and overall, Nick Fury's fun. It's enjoyable to see. I agree with what you're saying with the CGI, but it didn't distract me too much, and stuff with Goose is alright. But then you take one of the biggest questions of the MCU, what happened to Nick Fury's eye, and it's just, the cat scratched it. Like, it's a bit silly, to be honest, and it kind of just tarnished it. It just felt like a bit of a lazily done film, especially as the film before Endgame, and it's like, we're shoehorning Captain Marvel into Endgame at the last minute, and it's like, well, why? Like, and she's gonna be one of the most powerful people, and it's just, it wasn't right.
I gotta say, I completely reject that that was how Nick Fury lost his eye. I reject it. I don't think that that had actually happened.
Nick Fury's just a
Anyway,
character that the MCU just hasn't got right in ages, is it?
it's disappointing because we all love Nick Fury, and
I
that's why
know.
it sucks. But we can talk about him in a little bit. Dark World. Listen, I'm not gonna defend this movie too hard because I agree. This movie's not good. It's not good. It is a little bit of a guilty pleasure. And because the here's the thing, we do actually get to see more of Asgard, and I actually think it's a more interesting film than Thor 1. But it is so messy. The villain is so like taking me away from the movie because it is such a like an uninteresting, boring villain. And I don't like Natalie Portman's character. I've never liked her, and I don't really like her friend either. And they're again
I
boring.
forgot about
I
her
feel
bloody friend.
yeah, I feel like I've said that word so many. No, they're annoying because they're taking up so much screen time, and I don't care for it. Now, I'm not gonna say he saves the movie, but Tom Hiddleston's Loki. I mean, I'm rewatching Loki right now because I never actually finished it, and I just forgot just how much I love this damn character. He's so funny. He's so entertaining, and I'm not gonna say he saves the movie because he's only in like a third of the movie,
Yeah.
but man, when he's on screen, he has it. And for a third of the movie, that's more than I could say for these other movies. Like if legitimately enjoying at least a third of this movie, they're doing something right. If they took out Natalie Portman's character and just had it be a movie where Thor had to team up with Loki, who had just destroyed New York, and had to actually put aside like their differences and be like brothers and stuff, this might be one of my favorite Marvel movies. But alas, they barely did that, and instead we had to make room for that terrible villain and the boring Anthony Hopkins as Odin and the boring Jane Foster. And we will talk about if that gives you any idea where I put Ragnarok, by the way, this movie just had some entertaining things in it. I'll say this is just more entertaining movie to me than Thor 1, which is the
Yeah.
only reason why it's Thor 1.
Okay, I forgot whose turn is it? Is it my turn?
You go for it, yeah.
Okay, 28th I have gone for. When it's better than the first one, it's not much better. I've gone for V Marvels.
The Marvels, okay. I actually put Black Widow.
Black Widow. That's
Mm.
interesting. I'll explain mine first. The Marvels for me, it kind of feel a bit like a TV film. I don't mean that in a bad way, because there's some great films on TV, but like it was fun. It had its entertaining moments. It had a lot of bits that I actually quite enjoyed, like a fair bit. But then at the same time, you've just got a really confusing plot. Nick Fury's just sort of there, not really involved. There's a weird like musical number sequence in the film. You've got three characters who all could have interesting stuff. Like you've got sort of Maria, not Maria, sorry, Monica and Carol, and it's like there's that whole tension there, and they explore that a bit, but not entirely. I think Miss Marvel for me is by far the best of the three in this film and in other outings, and I think she's really fun. But it's kind of a mess. But I don't think it deserves some of the hate and discourse that it got at the time, because I don't think it's nowhere near as bad as a lot of other films. Explain Black Widow, because it's not great, but I wasn't expecting it this low.
It's really just, I feel like, okay, so I did already say that I think a bland movie is worse than a bad movie. And even though I think Black Widow is a bad movie, I just, how do you take one of the most interesting characters in all of Marvel and give her such an uninteresting movie? Like the movie, like I just didn't care. Like there was some good, let me just preference this. There was some good stuff in this movie. I love her sister. Her family's actually pretty interesting, and the fight scenes were pretty damn good. However, I just, why did this take place in between Civil War and Infinity War? This should have been like her origin story. I wanted to see the Red Room. There was just so much I wanted to see that this movie didn't do. And the stuff that I wanted to see that they kind of touched upon, I didn't feel like it was well developed. And I just didn't think that they really gave Black Widow the movie that she deserved. And just for that, and the fact that I've only seen this movie like two times, I just it was just kind of upsetting because I felt like Black Widow deserved more. And that's the only reason why it's so low.
Okay. 27th. I'll let you start.
All right. I don't have it. The Marvels. That's my next one.
Okay. So we're not too indifferent there. My 27th is Iron Man 2. So I'll
Okay.
let you talk about the Marvel first.
Yeah, you pretty much covered it. I don't hate the Marvels like a lot of people do. I actually thought it was actually kind of funny, but like some parts. However, it is a popcorn movie. It is the Cars movies to the Pixar movies, in my opinion. It is not bad, but compared to what the MCU is, it is a little bit upsetting that this is a movie that they actually spent so much time and effort and money
Absolutely.
into. But I mean, it exists. It didn't make me mad. It was entertaining enough for like if you have your family in town, you want to go see a movie. It's a fun little movie to see, but it's kind of upsetting when you're like, oh, this is the same movie. This is the same company that got us Avengers Endgame. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. But then not every film in the MCU has to be that scope. They can try different things. But then
Yeah.
Um, 27th, Iron Man 2. I think Iron Man 2 kind of was like, it was one of those early ones, whereas the first Iron Man was very focused and very much like, it wasn't trying to do all this other stuff. I think this one is like trying like, oh, we got to set up this and that, we got to introduce these characters. I think it just kind of got a bit lost in all of that. I think the film was a bit rushed, like Favreau wanted 3 years, I think, to make it, and they only gave him two or something like along those lines, and it just, the finished product is not great, and compared to the first one, it's really not great. Anyway, 26th now, and
All right. Is it me? It's you. It's you.
yeah, I'm on the even numbers. 26th, and you probably won't like this based on something you said when you were talking about Quantumania. I have gone for Ant-Man and the Wasp in 26th.
I will defend it, but my 26 is a movie you don't have to defend. It's Love and Thunder.
Yeah. Right, I'll talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp first, because I don't have many thoughts about it. It's one that I've only seen once when it came out, so maybe if I rewatched it, it might go up on the list. But it's kind of one where like the only memory of this film for me is that post-credit scene, is that sort of ending where it's like, oh, look, we got they're in the quantum realm. Like it's a memorable film. It's entertaining. Um, it's quite fun, but it doesn't have that kind of grandness, I think, of some of the other films, and maybe that big emotional weight. And maybe it doesn't need to, or isn't trying to do that. But then, for me, it just, when it comes to other MCU films, it just falls sort of down there. It's not bad. Maybe objective's a bit high. It just isn't one that I go back to.
I understand. It's one of those films where I definitely really enjoy it, but I also admit that I grew up with this movie. This was one of the first Marvel movies I had seen in theaters because I had got well, not one of the first, but actually, yeah, because I got into the Marvel universe when Black Panther came out in theaters, and that movie came out, and Ant-Man and the Wasp came out right after Infinity War, so it was one of the first movies I had seen in theaters, and it just had a special place in my heart. I thought it
No,
was the right amount
I
of
was
funny.
similar as well. Actually, I was. kind of Black
Yeah.
Panther, Infinity War, that kind of time period, which is why I think
And
probably we have such a heavy Phase 3 bias, probably, when it
oh
comes to this list, and the first two and Phase 4, 5 don't really stand as well,
yeah.
at least for my list, and I think so far you're following that same trend.
Yeah, I mean, I will talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp when I get to it, but I mean, it doesn't upset me when somebody puts it so low because it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
The humor doesn't hit
So,
as right
so
to
you've
other
got Love and
people,
Thunder, and I
but it
want
does
to
hit
see
me.
why you think it's not as bad as I put it. That dead bottom.
It's And again, this movie also really okay. It's not even that it made me mad. It's just that it made me sad, honestly, because we'll get to Ragnarok when we get to Ragnarok. But let's just say I love Ragnarok. I love it with all my heart. And to think that this is what came after. Do you understand how excited I was for this movie? Taika Waititi was
Oh,
coming back.
absolutely.
They were doing the same kind of shtick they were doing in Ragnarok. I love Thor. I love Valkyrie. Yeah, Jane Foster was coming back, but I didn't think I was going to kill the movie. I thought actually, hey, they're actually going to direct Natalie Portman well. I was so excited for this movie. And when we got the movie that we got, I just was like, really? Like it's not even half as funny as the Ragnarok. But really, what makes this movie not as good as Ragnarok, by the way, I'll just preface this, is that it's just plain silly. And people think that they want that means that we should make a serious Thor movie. No, Thor's not a serious character. That is never what Thor is
Yeah, we
supposed to
tried
be.
that with the first two.
Exactly. But Ragnarok got it right because I'll talk about Ragnarok when I get to it, but it just got it right. This forgot all the stakes, forgot the fact that even though Thor is a funny character, Thor lost everything. Thor has probably lost some of the greatest losses in all the MCU.
Yeah,
This is not how he's gonna act after Endgame. This is not how he's gonna act after Ragnarok and Infinity War. This is not the character. Yes, there should still be a sense of humor. Yes, it should not go all dark and serious. Infinity War Thor didn't go all dark and serious, but he wasn't a fucking clown. Okay? And even though and now I'm like, now you're wondering why it's so high. I still think this movie is just I can still watch it and be like, oh, that was kind of funny, or oh, that villain was
I
actually pretty
can't
cool.
because
There's some
it's
really
ruined by the silly tone, and that's why I've got it
it
at the
is
bottom.
so it is so silly. I mean, there are some here's the thing, I love comedy movies, and there are some jokes in here that are kind of funny and whatever. But maybe the more that I'm talking about it, the more I realize maybe it should have been lower. But yeah, it's missing Loki, and I'll end it at that.
Okay, what placement are we at now? 25th, right?
For
And
25th, 25th.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're first. Okay.
Okay, I don't know. I feel like you're gonna be upset about this, and I feel like a lot of people are gonna be upset about this, but I will defend myself. I got the first Avenger.
The first Avenger, wow. Actually, I do remember we did this way back. You used to have that one quite low. My 25th is Age of Ultron. I don't know if you know about that.
Hey, yeah, okay. Okay. I'll talk about First Avenger first. I really just gotta say, I do enjoy the Captain America character, and I just First Avenger, while it had some good things in it, and it's one of it's a very memorable movie for me. This was like like Phase One was is very nostalgic to me. It didn't hit me as much as some of the other it didn't stick with me as much as the other Marvel movies did, because some of the other Marvel movies, like with this, other than Steve and Bucky, I really didn't care about anybody else. I really didn't care for the way that they were doing the time period thing. Even though I do enjoy time period movies, I don't think Marvel did it that well. And it just didn't really stick with me. I just felt like there are some other movies and other Captain America movies, I'll even say, that just I felt like had a tighter story, felt like had stronger characters, and just I felt more attached and connected to what was happening and to the character. And that's just really the reason why it's low on my list.
I disagree with a fair bit of what you said, so we'll get to that in a minute.
Mm.
Age of Ultron. This is, I think, everyone and their nan agrees that this is the weakest Avengers film, and I think it's the one where they tried to do too much, and I think there's some really high highs, there's some great stuff. I think the best bits in this film are like the first one when you got them all kind of being around, having banter with each other. And this film did bring in two great MCU characters in Scarlet Witch and Vision, who would go on to be two of my personal favourites in all their later outings, but they're not brilliant in this one. And the decision to kill off Quicksilver as well, that easy, was really annoying to me. Ultron was okay, but not as good as he could have been. And for me, it's one where it's really messy and doesn't work the way I wish it did.
Always said that Avengers Age of Ultron is the weakest Avengers movie, but I'll spoil kinda that I do have it a lot higher. And the main reason just being is compared to the other Marvel movies we've been getting lately, it's just made me appreciate Age of Ultron so much more because I always considered Age of Ultron one of the weaker Marvel movies. But looking back on
Yeah,
it,
and
I'm
it's
like,
not now.
but looking back on it, like if that's one of the weakest Marvel movies, we were spoiled, dude. Because I don't think Age of Ultron is half as bad as I remember it being. I actually quite really enjoyed it,
Yeah,
but we'll get to
this
it
is
when we
another
get to
one that
it.
I haven't watched in a good few years. Maybe it's one I do need to come back to because I kind of
Yeah,
remember it being not great, so I don't really go back to it. 24th, I've gone for another one that you've already mentioned in Quantum Mania.
Quantum. Okay, pretty high, pretty high. I got Shang-Chi
Shang-Chi, that was very low for Shang-Chi. Um,
because I have only. I'll talk about this one first. Oh, I guess we already talked about Quantum Mania, so yeah, you go
yeah,
first.
I might have put it a bit high in retrospect, and maybe you have changed my corner a bit. I think Kang is the main standout in the film. I think his backstory is really creative. I like his ties to whatever that woman's name, Michelle Pfeiffer's character. I really enjoyed that sort of element, that kind of stuff. Although I do think he's defeated Siddeley. I think that one of the characters should have died in this film, maybe Scott himself, to be honest, because I think it would have showed stakes and shown Kang as a bit of a threat. You compare him to Thanos, who was built up for a decade, and when you first finally see him on screen, he wins in emphatic fashion, compared to Kang, who's defeated by some CD to villain. MODOK was a joke in this film. I mean, what were they thinking with that? But I think yes, it's a CGI abomination, but you still get the charm, you still get the entertainment of Paul Rudd, you still get that sort of enjoyment of it. I like kind of Cassie and her induction into this world as well, and there's some cool stuff visually, but I just didn't think it had the stakes that it needed for Kang's outing. And I do agree with you that the Ant-Man films were meant to be smaller scale, and this one wasn't, but almost it wasn't big enough scale for what they were trying to do. And so maybe I have the opposite problem too with this.
Cannot I just realized, and I cannot believe you put Quantumania above Ant-Man and the Wasp, but you're wrong. It's okay. It's okay to be wrong sometimes. Um, this is a completely, which when it comes to Shang-Chi, I am being so incredibly biased and I'm being so incredibly objective, but I just gotta be real here. Um, we've now the rest of these movies are movies that even if I'm gonna give them kind of a negative review, I still have love for and I still have nostalgia. Like these movies were like my childhood and my middle school years and like the years that like everyone was going through like COVID and just going through like bad places. These movies just always were like my comfort movies and stuff. And so when it comes to Shang-Chi, this movie just came out and it was a movie that wasn't bad. It was solid. These other movies just have bigger places in my heart. I've only seen this movie once all the way through. And I remember walking away being like, "Good." And then that's about all I remember. I really don't remember much of this movie. I remember it
Yeah,
being solid. I remember it being a solid movie, but it just doesn't really hold a special place in my heart like these other movies do.
yeah. I
And
think
that's the only
not your
thing.
strongest argument there, Amber. But I see where
Yeah,
you're
I
coming
mean,
from. I do. Personal bias comes into these a lot, and that's what the point of these rankings are. So
that's
I
really
get
it.
that.
And I remember Shang-Chi being pretty good. I maybe I need to give it another watch, but it really is I'm just being so freaking biased here. And especially when you see the one I have above this, you're gonna be like, you're insane. And I am insane. But it
Oh,
really is just
I'm scared to see what's coming. Okay, let's get to
these
23rd. What have you got?
got Iron Man 2.
Iron Man 2. I've got Iron Man 3. So
All right.
you can talk
Yeah,
about this first because I want to know why this film's better than Shang-Chi.
and again, I really don't have a strong case for Shang-Chi because I really gotta be honest, I don't remember much of the movie. I only saw it once when it came out. And I gotta put my hands up right there that I am being very objective and very not objective, I'm sorry, very subjective, very opinionated. But Iron Man 2, I'm being so subjective here. I just love the hell out of this movie. Iron Man is my favorite character in the entire MCU, and even though this movie is so messy, so clunky, so doesn't make sense, it is so fun. It introduced Black Widow. It just has some great memorable stuff in it. And even though like a lot of it is like things I don't care to see, the villains aren't that great, but that's a common trend. And the story was fine. But it was just fun. You know, the Iron Man character, Robert Downey Jr. just comes in, and this is like if like Iron Man, like this is like I feel like his character did what Loki did for the Dark World, where Loki was kind of like the saving grace of the Dark World. Well, if he was the main character, Dark World would have been a whole lot better. And that's what I kind of feel like for Iron Man. It's like he's still in 90% of the movie and still giving 100%. And whenever he's on screen, he just makes me smile. That's the reason why I do enjoy Iron Man 2, even though I do admit it is a very clunky and not very well put together movie.
Yeah, I think it is like that with films. I feel about that with Monsters University, which we already talked about in the Pixar one. Iron Man 3 for me, my I actually defend the Mandarin twist because I think a lot of people, their main reason for disliking this one is because of the Mandarin. And I heavily disagree with that sentiment because I think it's not really fair. Like, oh, they just didn't do what the comics did, so it's got to be bad. I think it was, as a twist, it was fine. I didn't mind it. I don't really like the ending of Iron Man 3 because, like, oh, he's going to give up being Iron Man forever and then he just goes back and Age of Ultron. I think that was a bit silly, but the film's fine. It's got a okay story, but it's one that it hasn't really stuck with me as much. So maybe it's a bit low, but you know, that kind of is it for me.
Well, that's me for the first adventure. But am I going next or you're going
No,
next?
22nd. I've gone for Doctor Strange in 22nd. The first Doctor Strange. So yes, I've actually put the sequel, but the original, which might
So
be controversial.
so did I.
Oh wow,
I got
we've agreed again, third time.
yep.
I'll let you speak again this time first.
It really is, and I gotta say again, I don't hate Doctor Strange. I actually love the character, and I loved a lot of things in this movie. But I just gotta be honest. I mean, for as cool of visuals that they had, and as for a great idea and great character that they had, I don't know why they kind of made it kind of bland. Like, I really didn't care for his love interest, and I really didn't care for the villain and the threat of this movie. I felt like for such a like amazing visuals and for a great character with a great introduction, I just felt like the story should have been stronger. It should have been more ludicrous. It should
Yeah,
have been crazy. They done something bigger, and they just really didn't. They played it safe. And this movie, like, look at this poster. This is not a movie that screams playing it safe to you, and it kind of did. Even though it does have a little place in my heart, it is not one I rewatch that much.
yeah, I agree with you. They played it safe. I kind of describe this one as like an autopilot MCU film. This feels like one of the ones that is the most like routine MCU. Like we got to click off this beats, and especially because it's an origin story, you're kind of just doing the same stuff. There's some okay stuff going on here. I think the climax and the villain is a bit silly and a bit just like I didn't really get what was going on there. Visually, it's got some good moments. You got stuff with like the Deathly Ancient one, obviously, and like that sort of stuff, which is okay, but it's just it feels very played, tired, just sort of whatever. But it's not bad. It's just kind of run of the mill MCU, which there's so many of these films, and some of them have to be like that. 21st.
I actually have Multiverse of Madness 21st.
Oh, okay. Mine's a little bit higher, but I'll explain in a minute. 20. What are we on? 21st. I put Volume 2, Guardians of the Galaxy, and that might be a
Ooh,
hot take.
ooh, that's the one I most disagree with you on. That's gonna be a
Um, I
crazy
I actually had this one lower originally, and when I looked at my list, it was like this is a bit silly putting it this
wow.
low. Um, for me, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is universally agreed the worst of the trilogy. I think in most people's
No.
eyes. Um, I just think that the story, the characters, there's a lot of care put into this film. Clearly, there's like James Gunn does a good job, but I just think that there's certain stuff that just doesn't work. Ego, it's a bit last minute. It's a bit forced. It wasn't done as perfectly. I think Gamora's really weak in this one as well. I don't really connect with her. It wasn't really until Endgame she was not Endgame, sorry, Infinity War she was much of a character anyway. But I just thought it was mediocre in a lot of senses.
Well,
Um,
uh,
Drax, Mantis are okay. in the sections, but it's just sometimes the comedy can go a bit too far and be a bit even mean spirited, I think. And yeah, that's just sort of me. It's also one that I don't come back to as well. If I'm going to watch Guardians, it will be the first or the third. So yeah, maybe that's why I
Well,
said
I completely disagree with you, and for numerous reasons. Yeah, I'll just straight I love the Guardians, and that's gonna Guardians 2 is much higher on my list, and
okay, we'll
I'll
get back to that later. What did you have again? I forgot. Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness.
Multiverse of Madness, and it really just comes down to, again, fun visuals, interesting enough story, and interesting enough characters. I hated what they did with Scarlet Witch. I hated it because I love the Scarlet Witch character and I loved WandaVision. Where we left Wanda in WandaVision did not lead to this. This came out of nowhere. Now, the reason why but with that said, with what I don't like about this movie, with that said, I do still find this more interesting than the first Doctor Strange because I actually thought they had an interesting story. Even though I don't like what they did with Scarlet Witch, if I just take away my personal bias, it's still an interesting threat. And it's still like for Doctor Strange in a Doctor Strange movie, looking at it objectively, it's an interesting movie with some really interesting visuals and really cool ideas. And I kind of like that they played up the horror aspect. I do like horror movies, and I kind of like that they played with that a little bit, but they wasted all the cameos, if you can even call them that.
Oh god,
And
yeah, Illuminati.
it was just it was really messy, very clunky. This movie needed a few more rewrites. But I mean, for what we got, I do think it's more interesting,
Yeah.
and I'll go back to this one more than the first one because
This
this
is a
one actually
film that I
stuck.
defend a fair bit. Like out of the kind of Phase 4, Phase 5 films, this is the one that people call bad that I think has the most good in it. And I've got a little bit higher than this, not super high, but we'll get to that in a minute. I agree on some aspects, but maybe not to the full extent. Top 20 now. I've gone for one that you've already mentioned in Black Widow. What have you got in 20th?
That you already mentioned, I got Iron Man 3.
Okay, I'll go first with Black Widow quickly. I think with Black Widow, it's a case of like it was a weird timing. It didn't help because this film was delayed as well because this is the first Phase 4 film, so we waited pretty much almost a year to finally see it. And I think it's a solid film. Florence Pugh is the clear standout, the Red Guardian, that family, they really work as a chemistry. I think some of the big issues in the film is the CGI, the Taskmaster was completely wasted, but I like the bad guy, I think he's really threatening. I think that, yeah, Black Widow deserved a solo film, and it's pretty solid. I think it gets too much hate for really being a pretty nice film. I like the hints of a backstory, and I sort of agree with you, maybe we could have seen an origin story, but at the same time, I think this was good enough for what we got, but it's just weird that you're doing a film about a character after she's already dead, so there was pretty much no stakes involved, which kind of ruined it to an extent.
It was a weird placement. I agree with that. And no, I got Iron Man 3, and the reason why this actually used to be a lot lower on my list. And this is another one of those movies I actually consider one of the weaker Marvel movies, but I just kind of went back to it recently, and I agree with you on the Mandarin. I didn't think that was a terrible twist. And I actually quite enjoy this movie. Like there's a lot of good, interesting things in it. I love the Iron Man character, and I love that he's actually being thrown through some good stakes. Like this is showing like Tony's past, like the way that he acts and stuff comes back and bites him in the ass. He can't just get away with that. And now he actually, and I feel like this really did a number on his character. This didn't feel like a conclusion to Iron Man. This felt like we are finally seeing a different side of Tony that I feel like carries on for the rest of the MCU. And I just thought that this movie did a solid job. Now, is it great? No, I don't love the villain, and I don't really love how I don't know, just some of the story and some of the things that they did. And like there's some stupid decisions made in this movie that you just kind of have to like kind of face palm yourself. Like some of the stuff in the story is not the strongest. It's not a very well written movie, but for what it is, I mean, I just love the Tony character, and I thought they really did a good job with it, and it's a solid movie.
Yeah, no, that's a pretty solid defense of the film. Right, so we top 20. Well, we've already reached top 20, but teen digits now. 19th. What have you got?
Ooh, I don't know if a lot of people are gonna like this, but I got it's not. Ooh, I got a preference. Top 20 is good. Top 20 is good.
I mean,
Okay,
yeah,
I got Wakanda Forever.
Wakanda Forever. Okay. I've got that a little bit higher. I've got Far From Home in 19th.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um.
I'll talk. Yeah.
You can talk first on Wakanda Forever.
Yeah. I liked it. I thought it was very solid. I thought it was actually pretty, like, especially, like, of course, everything going on
Yeah.
with the real world and stuff. I thought this was a solid tribute to Chadwick Boseman. And, I always liked the Shuri character, and I thought the villain was actually really interesting. And I thought that a lot of stuff in the movie was super interesting, and I really, actually really enjoyed it. But I do have to say, this might just be a personal thing, but Black Panther was one of my favorite Marvel characters of all time. Black Panther is the reason why I got into the MCU. Like seeing Black Panther just completely like changed me, and I just have it has such a special place in my heart. And that even though I thought this movie was solid, I can't take away from the fact that this is Black Panther without Black Panther, and unfortunately, that does kind of hit my enjoyment of the
Yeah.
movie a little bit
And that
because
that
it
was
just
always going to be the case for Disney. The fact that they made
yeah.
it good to a degree is very impressive.
Oh yeah, but it is just a personal thing. It is just kind of like it
Yeah.
is also hard to watch this movie, especially because it's just so damn sad, and it's just so like because you already what actually happened and stuff. And also, I will say some of the things in this movie I feel like they should have changed just for the fact that Chadwick Boseman. Can I spoil a little bit? Well, I
Yeah.
won't spoil, but the character death that happened in this movie, I felt like shouldn't have happened. I felt like that was overkill. And arguably, I actually think that even though I like the Shuri character, I thought Black Panther should have been Okoye. I thought she deserved it more.
It's a
But
fair argument.
but for what it is, I mean, solid movie. And especially with everything going on, it was always going to be Black Panther without Black Panther, and that was always going to hinder people's enjoyment. But for what they got, it was fine.
Yeah. Far From Home is kind of the case of like if you stop to think about the film for 5 minutes, a lot of the plot and a lot of the story doesn't really make sense. Like the glasses plot line is really stupid. It's like, oh, Tony left these to Peter Parker. Why? Like that was not going to go well. There's a lot of things, but then it's just really fun seeing Spider-Man in Europe, seeing him do this sort of stuff. You know, Mysterio works a lot as a villain. You know, MJ's just really entertaining. And Ned, you just enjoy these characters and seeing them work around. But the actual story and plot and a lot of stuff going on. But the ending is really strong, and kind of that reveal of everyone finding out and that setup going into No Way Home was one of the strongest. So, yeah, I think it's a fantastic sort of in that sense, but I think there's just a lot of stuff kind of holds it back and a few moments that just sort of take you out of it, I think. So let's get to 18th. My 18th, I've gone for, you probably won't like this, I've gone for the original Ant-Man.
All right. I'm not gonna like mine, and no one's gonna like mine because apparently this movie's a lot more loved than I realized it was. And even though I admit that this movie is solid, it just, again, it never clicked with me, and that's Winter Soldier.
Wow.
Yeah. I'll, I'll have to talk about that, but you go first.
Wow. Yeah, that's quite a difference, probably biggest difference on the list so far. And Ant-Man for me, it's a very solid adventure, but I think it does feel a bit tropey at points. It's like, oh, we're doing the villain that's just a repeat of Ant-Man. The climax is fun, but it's kind of like it's been done a lot of the film in that sort of sense. But it's really fun just seeing this character and seeing the way he goes about his life, and it's a clever. It's one of those films. This film, the director had the idea to do this. I think Edgar Wright is, to do this film before even the MCU started, and it's cool to see it at Vision. It's entertaining, but I think just other films stuck with me more, and that's all it is.
That's exactly how I feel about the Winter Soldier. I thought the Winter Soldier was a solid movie, and I actually, this is the only MCU movie like with all the movies that came out before COVID happened, they all were like special in my heart and stuff. This was the only movie I had only seen once. Like I never went back to rewatch this movie. And then I recently rewatched it, but during that time I never did. And I got to be honest, even though it is solid and the story is well written, the characters are well developed, they work off of each other well. There's some really good stuff, like stuff that sticks with you in this movie, like memorable things, I should say. It just compared to some of the other Marvel movies, it just didn't really have that hold on me. Like there's like I can't really like go into like much detail about it because again, it is one of those movies I've only seen a handful of times. Maybe it deserves a rewatch, but the Captain America character, I feel like I really think he's the strongest when he's with the Avengers or when he has like other things going on. The Captain America character his solo movies, especially when it's like just him, he just wasn't that interesting to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I disagree heavily with pretty much everything you said, so we'll get to that a fair bit later on in the list. Let's get to 17th. What have you got?
I have this movie used to be so low on my list, but like I said, Age of Ultron.
Age of Ultron. Okay, I've also got one you've already said, the first Avenger. So I'll let you talk about Age of Ultron first.
Okay, so like I said, this movie used to be so really low on my list because I used to think this was one of the weakest movies. But man, when I went back to this movie after getting out of I think it was Eternals, I rewatched Age of Ultron and just I rewatched at the right time because I just love these characters so much that they still have the same charm. Yes, Ultron should have been stronger, and yes, they didn't introduce the new characters very well. The fight scenes stick with you. The character moments stick with you. Should there have been more character moments? Yes, but it just sticks with me. I just really have a soft spot for this movie. And even though like you want a strong like a stronger like more well developed villain for an Avengers movie, it is still the Avengers, and they have yet to get them wrong in my eyes. And it just has a place in my heart that I respect. And I'm like, damn, if this was the weakest movie we had for a while, Marvel used to be really good.
Yeah, the first Avenger for me, I very much disagree with what you said about all kind of the war stuff. I think that kind of just have it. It's quite a very straightforward story in the MCU. It's kind of just a Steve Rogers. He's just a good guy doing the right thing. I think it's a really touching, solid story. A great ending, kind of bringing them into the real world. I just think it's just a solid film, and I don't. I understand maybe it didn't stick with you much, but I think the Captain America trilogy, especially the first two, you should probably go back to because I think that you've heavily compared to a lot of the more recent films that we've got, the Captain America trilogy is just like as films, just very solid films. So yeah, that's what I'd suggest.
Soldier is a solid movie to me, and I'll talk about a little bit more about like the top 20 in this list because I love Marvel, and if I didn't love Marvel, then I wouldn't like if I didn't love Marvel, then more of these films would be getting negative reviews, and me ranking them is just kind of why it's like lower. But I gotta be honest, I love a lot of these movies, and even though it's considered low on the list, I still love it, and I still admit that Winter Soldier is a solid movie. I just have to say, like the Captain America character was never one of my favorites, and that's really it. And I mean, we'll talk about that more. But even though I like the character when he's like with the Avengers and like doing like his shtick, I don't know. Just his solo movies never stuck with me, and they
Yeah.
still really don't. Winter Soldier, I might need another rewatch, but First Avenger, I rewatched that one a fair amount of times, and it really never stuck with me.
Okay, 16th. I've gone for maybe it's a bit high, but I'm kind of a guilty pleasure for me. Multiverse of Madness.
That is a bit high, but I got Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Well, I think that's high personally, but I'll talk about Multiverse Madness first. I I'm kind of the defender of the Wanda stuff. I think it's not perfect, but as a standalone thing, the arc they give her in this film, I think, is solid in a lot of senses. I think Cap's arc is really good as well. I've not Cap, sorry, this is strange. I really like what they do with him. I really like that kind of adverse, and I did get more invested in his kind of romance life and that sort of stuff than I did the first time around. I think that some of the Sam Raimi direction style, like the zombie stuff at the end, and some of the visual stuff he do is so interesting, and a lot of the multiverse angle, I really enjoy that. And the Illuminati and all of those sort of cameos were a bit of a joke, but they added, they had their purpose. I like America Chavez and kind of her involvement and connection to it all. You know what? It's just really enjoyable. I remember watching this one. And I hadn't really seen a big MCU film in a long time because the other ones were kind of either disappointing, small scale, and this was just really exciting for me to watch, maybe in a degree. So I think maybe it's one I've seen 3 or 4 times. So I think that maybe I've got a bit of bias for this one. But I think of the Phase 4 and 5 films that get kind of hate, I don't think this one deserves the discredit that it gets.
I mean, it really is one of those movies that I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it like a lot of people did, and I understand why you might have it so high. But Ant-Man and the Wasp, I just gotta say, I mean, maybe it's because I just had a bias to this movie, but no, I've always defended this movie because I think it is a well written movie. I think it's not it's yeah, it came off of Infinity War, and so people shouldn't be expecting Infinity War, but I enjoyed it. I mean, I thought it was funny. I thought it was heartwarming. I thought it was charming. I thought the story was just tightly written and that there wasn't many plot holes. They told a straightforward story. I
Yeah.
love the side characters and just there was so much that stuck with me in this movie. There was a very creative, interesting movie that I think gets way too much hate because if it just it hits the right crowd and like while I don't really put up much of an argument when people are like, oh, it just wasn't for me, I get that. But for people to say it's a bad movie, you're just wrong, dude. It's
It
not a
isn't
bad
bad.
movie.
It is far from bad,
Yeah.
that one. Let's get on to the top 15. What have you got?
I got Far From Home.
Far From Home. That's quite low, actually.
You put it
Oh no,
lower.
sorry. I thought you meant No Way Home. Sorry.
No, no.
Yeah. Sorry. Brain fart. 15th. I've got Deadpool and Wolverine. I'll let you talk about Far From Home first.
Yeah, man. I mean, okay, I gotta take a hot take for a second. I Tom Holland Spider-Man is might be my least favorite Spider-Man. And not his movies, just the character.
That's a hot
And
take.
that I just, I mean, I will talk about it a little bit more in a minute, but I mean, Far From Home is a fun little movie. And same thing with Ant-Man and the Wasp. I think it is a solidly written film. And I think, and I enjoyed a lot of it. I mean, it came out at a time that I was really in love with Marvel. And I love the ending. I didn't love the villain, but I enjoyed the villain. I enjoyed the visuals and I enjoyed a lot of the stuff. But it just, with the hold on the heart that some of these other movies have, this one doesn't have it as much. And the Tom Holland Spider-Man, this is gonna make I'll talk more about it when I get to like No Way Home or something, but he's just okay to me. Like I don't
Yeah.
think like he just like while I feel like Toby and like Andrew like they like really like stuck with me. Tom is just like your kind of your average, charming, what you'd expect, kind of not I'm not gonna say bland, but just generic in a way. Even though
I
I
think
don't think
he's
he's
more entertaining when he's like when he like Infinity War, Civil
yes.
War, as compared to
Yeah,
his actual solo films. Until No Way
totally.
Home, and I'll talk about that a bit later. But Deadpool and Wolverine, I put that in 15th, and uh, I'm someone who I didn't really grow up massive fans of like kind of the Deadpool films. It's only the first year that I watched them all, so maybe that played into it. I just thought this one had the like if it did everything you wanted it to do. Like it did what it said on the tin. It brought Wolverine into the MCU. It was really funny. It was very entertaining. It was wacky. The story is kind of where it falls. I just didn't get invested in the story. I didn't get invested in the side characters. It didn't deliver on that front. But I think for what the MCU needed, it's kind of like this middle finger, kind of almost poking fun at the MCU, which tried to be done with other stuff, but it was effective at that. And I think it was kind of it was the win that the MCU needed right now, and it was kind of that big moment. So yeah, that's where I sit with it.
Yeah, I like what you said when you mentioned that you didn't really grow up with Deadpool or that it just wasn't really the film for you because when you see where it is on my list, I just have the preference. Deadpool, those Deadpool movies, I watched religiously like it was an MCU movie in itself. So I have such a love for the Deadpool character, and so I personally put Deadpool and Wolverine a lot higher just because it's just more of my film, and
Yeah,
I totally get why to be like lower on some mills because it's one of those things where it's like I get it why it wouldn't be so high. It's for a specific crowd. But next up we're at number 14.
yeah. 14th, I have put you were just talk about him, but this is his first film, Homecoming. I've got. What have you got?
I got the first Ant-Man.
First Ant-Man. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
realistic, to be honest. I thought you'd have it like top five. Starting this of how much you
No,
rave about these
okay.
films.
Okay, listen, I really do defend these movies. And even though I'm not crazy, I'm not crazy. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, Ant-Man is the best Marvel movie of all time. No. But it's still a good movie. And I really enjoy the Ant-Man character. And I thought that, and I just think for what it is, because the MCU, you said it before. You actually said in this ranking, not every movie has to be Endgame. And
Yeah,
that still doesn't make a movie bad. And this movie is a solidly written, small little movie that gets its job done. It is funny, it is creative, it is interesting. I love all the characters. I just think this is a fun movie. And I go back and watch. This is one of my most most, but I've rewatched this movie tons of times, and I still get a lot of enjoyment out of it. And I really do love this movie. But I'm not crazy. I get it. It's not top five, but I do enjoy it.
yeah. No, 100%. I think you're spot on with that, and I see why. you feel that way. Homecoming, for me, I think it was really clever with kind of its set piece and its setup, where it's like, we're not going to do the origin story for the third time over, we're going to kind of just cut right into the action. I like the kind of Tony Stark, Iron Man interjection of it. The villain's really good in this one because he's kind of like, he's more grounded compared to other villains. He's sort of like, oh, he's just a guy. But then it's like, it's a great twist. I think it was really effective and some really fun stuff. I think the tone, the humour is really good in a lot of this film, but it kind of has its faults and it doesn't quite have the highs of the films I put above it. I feel like we're kind of getting to the point of the list where it's just like, they're all very good films, it's just which ones stand out for you more, and maybe this one doesn't as much.
Actually, if we can just kick off number 13, I have Homecoming. I agree. I mean, I think I actually love this. I actually really, really enjoy this movie. It is kind of like Ant-Man to me in a way where I just think it is charming and I think it's fun. And even though I think this is actually hot take. I think this is where Tom Holland is the strongest as Spider-Man in his movies because he just did the job. He just did the job well. He did what he had to do. He was charming enough. He was funny enough. And I just think this is a fun movie. I really love his relationship with Iron Man.
Yeah.
And I think the side character, even the students who are usually the most annoying parts of these movies, are all funny and memorable. And this is just a memorable, fun movie. And I think this is a solid, solid, fun movie.
Yeah, so I didn't say my 13th. My 13th is.
Sorry.
That's okay. Um, my 13th is actually Shang-Chi, which you did mention earlier.
Wow.
I think this film, it's got one of the great kind of hearts to it. Like, the kind of relationship between the villain, the father, and Shang-Chi himself is fantastic. I love that kind of backstory, all of that stuff. Awkwafina is usually the most annoying part of every film she's in, but I really like her character in this, so they wrote her well somehow. Um, there's a lot of really good elements of it. I think the way it falls apart is the third act, where it's like, oh, we've got to have this big CGI finale because it's a Marvel film. It's like, I didn't think it needed it here. But apart from that, I really like all the martial arts stuff and kind of that injection. I think Shang-Chi, and it's surprisingly really funny, this film as well. Like, it didn't need to have this comedy, but I think on that front it's really funny.
Could have been funnier.
Okay, 12th. I'll kick off with another one that you've mentioned, and I'm probably going to get some flames for this. I put the original Black Panther.
Okay, I actually put the original Iron Man.
Oh, okay. Not too far. I'll talk about Black Panther for. You haven't actually. You put Wakanda Forever, haven't you? You haven't put the first
Yeah.
one yet. I'll talk about Black Panther
Oh,
first. For me, Black Panther is a really solid sort of film. It's a great element story. Killmonger's one of the strongest MCU villains to this day because he's just like, you kind of understand him. He's got that great stuff. I think it was a bit overrated in the sense that I think it was an Oscar-nominated film, and in the same year
yeah,
as
yeah.
Infinity War, and it's like, it's not better than Infinity War in that sort of sense. And I think it got like some of the CGI and some of the fight scenes. It's again like, do we need these big CGI fights in this kind of more grounded film? And but T'Challa, they get him right. Shuri, they get him right, and I think that's what really works for Black Panther. You actually care about the cast. It's not just him, and that's why the sequel is able to succeed to a degree, because the characters around him are just as good as him as well.
Damn. Yeah, I actually totally agree with that. I'll talk about Black Panther when I get to it, but I did already mention how that was a movie to get me into the Marvel universe. I definitely agree though that the Oscar buzz and the fact that people are treating this like not the people but like the Academy treating this like the best Marvel movie of all time. Shut up.
Yeah.
Like clearly never seen another Marvel movie. But it is still but yes, I love that movie and we'll talk about that when I get to it. But the first Iron Man, I think I got a really preference. The top 12 are all movies I love so dearly. I love Iron Man 1 so much. Like when I went back and rewatched, like I used to have like MCU marathons and stuff. When I watched Iron Man, I've watched the hell out of this movie because I just love the Iron Man character and I think that this is his best solo movie. I just think
Yeah.
there's
By
so
a
much.
landslide.
This is one of the strongest origin stories for not only a character but this entire universe. And I just think like for what it is, even though the villain like is kind of annoying, everything else I just can't think of anything wrong with it. It's a solid, solid movie that kickstarted this amazing universe. So
Yeah.
everybody has to have
We'll
respect for
get
it.
we'll get to Iron Man in a minute because it's similar on my list. But kick off 11th. What have you got?
I have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Interesting. Um, below Guardians 2 on your list.
Oh, yes.
I don't see many people say that, so we'll see what you think when you get to that. For me, I have got Wakanda Forever, which you already mentioned. I put it above the first Black Panther, which is probably a controversial take as well, in a lot of senses. So I'll talk about this first since you've already talked about the sequel. I think this film was a bit long. Like, it's nearly 3 hours as well. I don't really rewatch much, but I think there's so much good stuff in it. Like, the the tribute aspect of it is fantastically done, and they're able to build off these side characters. And as much as it's not the same without T'Challa in it, like they still are able to do a great story with a great villain, some great kind of aspect. Angela Bassett's performance is astonishing in this. I even liked what's her name, Ironheart's introduction. I thought she. People said it felt out of place. I don't think it did. I thought she slotted in and was part of the story as very well. I think the third act as well was pretty solid, and I think overall it's one that I really enjoyed. But it is one I've only seen twice because of how long it is, and that's the only caveat for me.
The reason why I was so low on mine. But I'm actually in the middle of watching this right now. I actually paused it to do this, and I'm gonna finish it after. Um, I here's okay. I think this is the right time to say that the Guardians of the Galaxy are probably my favorite heroes in the MCU.
Yeah,
I'm just in with them. They're like they are my comfort movies. They're my comfort characters. I had Guardians of the Galaxy themed birthday parties. I literally been on every ride, and I will. And they're my favorite. I just love the Guardians of the Galaxy. They are tragic characters, and that's why the comedy works so well. Is because you don't want to just see dark serious like movies and stuff. The fact that they are such tragic characters, like the comedy, and they use comedy to kind of cope with that, and which is why the comedy works so well in the other movies. This movie needed to happen, and the tone needed to exist. It needed to be a darker movie because this is going to be the last time we probably see them together for a while, and it needed to come full circle. The fact that Rocket's a tragic character, Quill has some tragic stuff in it. Like this is they are sad characters that just found each other and found their little family. Did I love the ending? And I'm talking like the last 5 minutes. No, but I just think that this movie needed to happen and needed to exist. But it I don't love it as much as the other two because this isn't gonna be one that I rewatch to like see my comfort characters, you know? Even though I
yeah.
do think it needs to happen, it is still very sad and it's still really hard to watch. And even though it's a solid movie, there's still some really funny moments in this and some really well done action scenes. It's not the strongest. Like when you want to explain the Guardians to someone, this is not the movie you show them. You know, this is a movie that needed to wrap it up, and what
Yeah.
it did it well, but it is not one that I watch a lot because it's just hard to watch.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I feel like your logic seems to be that you're upset that this is the last James Gunn Marvel film.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But hopefully, yeah. Oh yeah. I'm just upset. Yeah. It's. I do not. I refuse to believe that we're never seeing the Guardians again.
Okay, let's get to the top 10 now. I've gone for the original
Ooh.
Iron Man. I said that it was coming up close.
Oh,
What have you got?
I got the original Black Panther.
Okay, not too much different then. I thought you'd have it a little bit higher. For me, Iron Man, I'll just base it off. But I think this film it didn't have the pressure of being this big start and this massive like kind of opening. It's like I feel like the problem with other universe, I talk about the DCEU because it just was such a failure and everything. Like Man of Steel didn't deliver. It wasn't a great film, and this film had to be good because we wouldn't have any of the others without it. And it was amazing. It was, and you always give credit to the first one because of that. I think it's such a grounded film. I think he's so well casted, Robert Downey Jr. in the role, and he makes this character and he makes this role, and the villain's really good. It's just really enjoyable, and it's not much to say. It's just a great film. You can talk about Black Panther now.
Great. I gotta talk. Like, I've been kind of like really building up this movie because it is. This is the movie to get me into the MCU, and I just have a lot of love and a lot of respect for it. And I just think, you said it. I love the characters, and this could have just been. Even though I love Black Panther, he's one of my favorite characters. Period. If he didn't have a solid ensemble, it wouldn't have been as strong as it was. And I think the story is strong. I think the villain is some of the strongest we've seen in the entire MCU,
Sure.
and the fight scenes were creative. The visuals aren't amazing, but those waterfall scenes, man, do they stick with you. And I love the family. I love the just the world. I love the Wakanda, and I love how we actually got to see Wakanda, and it wasn't like a damn like even though like Black Panther is on Earth for quite a bit of time in this movie, Earth, not Wakanda, I should say. It's still it kept your
Yeah.
interest. It wasn't because he actually brought his interesting characters with him. So I just love this movie. It's a great movie.
Okay, we're on to single digits now. What have you got in ninth?
I have a movie. Top 10 are such close, dear movies to my heart, but I got the first Avenger. Not the first Avenger, but the first
The
Avengers.
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 Yeah, I've got that one a little bit higher up. We'll see in a minute. Ninth, I've gone for one you've already said, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I think in similar
Okay.
ways to I talked about Deadpool and Wolverine, I think that 2022 and a lot of 2023 were so bad for the MCU in the terms of like the films that came out. Like we had something like Quantum Mania come out last year, which was just we both agree was such a shambles. I think this film had to deliver, and it did deliver, and it was the perfect sort of send off to this trilogy. It was the perfect kind of send off to the characters. I think the villain, he's so maniacal, so evil, you just hate him, and it's so clever, such a great idea. And giving kind of that humanity to Rocket and kind of expand on that character, such a clever thing to do. I think that them all living was a bit of a cock out. I think the MCU has this thing where they shield characters too much and they don't kill people off, and then when they do, it's like it's a fake out death. Like I think that there needs to be more stakes, and I think something like the final film that was one of them should have died, and that's my takeaway personally. But it's a really solid film, good send off. But I think the first one just surpasses it, which we'll get to in a minute. What have you got?
Actually, yeah. Well, I have the first the
Yeah,
Avengers,
you've
but
already said.
I'll just quickly refute. I actually disagree that I think it actually works better that they all survive because we established this movie. They've all been through such hard times, and they've already had to experience such a loss. I mean, Gamora actually died, and so it's not like there was like no stakes or anything. I think that they deserve to live. I think that if any
Yeah.
character deserved to live or not have a cop out or whatever, it was these characters.
Yeah,
These
I think
characters
that's
deserve
kind of
to
an
live.
overall MCU thing in general. But I think they protect the
Yeah,
characters. The Avengers, I could imagine it's mainly just praise. But what have you got to say?
it is just praise. It is nothing but praise. I love this movie so much, and I just this is the first time we're seeing all like look at the poster, man. I mean, they're all perfect, and they all work off of each other so well. And there's not a single moment in this movie that bores me or is has me uninterested. Loki's a great villain. The
Yeah.
characters, there's some amazing fight scenes in this movie, and this really just kicked off just the Avengers. And this is what kind of like, and especially that post credit scene, this is where you're like, okay, this is a damn good franchise. And these are some damn interesting characters and some damn fun stories and some damn interesting like things. And I just love this movie.
Okay, let's get on to eighth place, and I'm not sure how you're gonna feel about this one, and I imagine
Hmm.
this might make your top five. I've gone for Ragnarok.
Yeah, it's definitely much higher on mine, but I actually have Deadpool and Wolverine.
Okay, I'll let you talk about for that first since you already brought it up.
Yeah. I just okay, like I said, I watched the Deadpool movies religiously when I was younger, and I love the Deadpool character. And I'm actually not even the biggest X-Men fan. I've kept up with the movies, but I was never really the biggest X-Men fan. This movie got Wolverine right for me. I just love these characters' dynamic. This movie, like, this was my movie. Story okay, like it what was it the best movie of all time? No, but I mean it just hit me right, and I just legitimately like this is a movie that you're just supposed to really just go in and just enjoy it, and I really did. And I thought that it could have been a lot more in your face with the cameos, and I felt like it could have been a lot more like, oh, look what we got here, or look at that. Like it could have been a cameo fest, and I love that like the cameos in this movie felt like they needed to be there and felt like they actually had a right to be there, and it didn't take away from the main plot, which was we just wanted to see Deadpool and Wolverine. And damn it, we got Deadpool and Wolverine. So I really enjoyed this movie.
Yeah. Um. Wait. For Ragnarok. That's what I'm talking about. For me, I think that this is like the one full film that actually gets him right. I don't actually like the other three full films. This is the exception. I think Hela's fantastic. kind of with the Death Road and Loki, everything just kind of works. I think they got the tone right here. Whereas Love and Thunder wasn't funny and it was just silly. The tone here is comical at its moment, but you also have that serious stuff, and you have Thor losing his eye, and you have like stuff in this film that matters and stakes, and the way it sets up Endgame as well. That post-credit scene at the end, not Endgame, sorry, Infinity War at the end. It's just amazing. I love the induction of the Hulk, like. It's a great film, but I just think the 7 films maybe have something more deeper to them, but make them stand out more for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have to like talk about it when I get to it, but Ragnarok is an amazing movie, and I will get to it when I get to it. But okay, I'll kick off number 7, and I really have to preference right now. I think this is a solid movie. I really enjoyed this movie. This is going to be so much higher on your list. It's literally top 5 on everybody else's list. And even though I really enjoyed this movie and I really got into it, I love the Avengers. That is what I've always loved. I have No Way Home. Spider-Man is a great character, but I love the Avengers more. And when I look at this movie, I'm comparing it to the other MCU movies. And even though this is a solid Spider-Man movie, and I really enjoyed what they did and how they got all the characters together, and how this is just a really good, not send off, but just really well done for like the Tom Holland Spider-Man, what they did for his character and everything. I'm here for the Avengers, and I'm here for some of the other like MCU characters, and so that's the only reason why it is quote lower than other people's. But I do
Yeah.
enjoy. No Way Home was a solid movie though.
My 7th is the first Avengers, which I think some people put this one even higher. I think this film had such a massive sort of task to it because like it's literally the first, like it was unprecedented in history, and we've seen other failed attempts like Justice League, for example, which just didn't deliver on this front. And to bring all these characters together, the band, for the rapport they had, they work as a team, and that New York battle, it's iconic and it will go down in history. And I think that maybe some of the other Avengers films, or 2 in particular, surpassed it in terms of scale, but they wouldn't have been successful if this one didn't land, and it's amazing because of that. And this is also one we did an episode on way back, and I still hold most of my opinions, and I think it really delivers.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I don't even know what else I can say about No Way Home other than that. I mean, they did Spider-Man so much love and so much care and so much respect. And I really love how they did it. And it's a very fun, enjoyable movie. But a Spider-Man character, I've always just like, I enjoy it. But he's not my favorite character, which is the only reason why No Way Home is not as high for me. I've always said I liked Miles Morales the best. I love the Into the Spider-Verse movies. And I love these movies. I love the Spider-Man movies too, just not as much as the other MCU movies.
Yeah. Um. It comes to preference at this point, doesn't it? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get into the top 6. And my 6th place is probably one that most people might not like. I've gone for Avengers Endgame in 6th.
Okay, not bad. Hmm, hmm. This is where I have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
I can't believe you put that this high.
What was I?
I mean,
Should I
there's
talk
one
about
in
my
my
first?
top 5 which you're going to be like that with if you're counting. There's one film I haven't mentioned yet, and I'll let you talk about that first since it's
I cannot stress enough how much I love the Guardians of the Galaxy. And I just completely disagreed with you. I think that this is such a funny, well done movie. There's hardly one joke that doesn't land for me. The characters are all on at their peak here.
yeah.
The found family, like the family of it all. You just gotta love it. And I thought everybody had something interesting going on. I love Yondu's. Even though Ego is not the strongest villain, and even though it didn't need to end with a big CGI fest at the end, I didn't care. These characters just made the whole movie, and I just and like they're at their peak, and like I'm like the story I thought was solid, like I just really enjoyed this movie, and I've rewatched this movie. Like, this is one of my most rewatched MCU movies because
Yeah.
every time I watch it, I just love it again and again. And it really is just a solid, perfect like Guardians of the Galaxy movie for me.
In terms of like the cinema theater experience, Endgame is number 1. In terms of the moment, in terms of that final battle, it's number 1. But when you And actually, looking at what's happened in the MCU after Endgame, I have so much respect for this film because it really did things right. Like the first hour of the film is so fantastic because you see the grief, you see kind of how these Avengers deal with Happiness disappearing. It really is given the full respect, and it really is. The middle chunk is probably the weakest chunk. The time travel plot, it works for what it is, and it's fun to kind of go back to these movies and even the films that you didn't like as much, like the Dark World, and kind of go back to those worlds and do this kind of time trial heist, but there are some flaws in it. But then there's some of the great moments, like of course Natasha's death, which was a spoiler, but come on, everyone knows. Let's be honest. Um, yeah. So I think Endgame's great, and that final battle. I mean, it's everything you could have wanted. It's the perfect ending, and it's so well done. But I just think that the six films as films, I've got the 5 films I've got above it are just slightly better. So that's why.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I mean, we'll talk about Endgame when we talk to it, but I guess we'll kick out the top five because I'm kind of shocked that you put this above this, but Captain America Civil War.
Yeah. Um. I've also got Civil War actually.
Even I don't think that Endgame is worse than this. Civil War, I just like every like man, like I just love the reason why I love Marvel so much is because they really humanize all these characters. And you feel like you can really relate and connect to these characters. And nowhere I feel like is that more shown in this movie, where I really felt emotion. I really felt pulled. I'm like, every character had a point, you know? And every character, like, I was just so like, I was like, damn, I agree with Iron Man, but I mean, I kind of understand where Captain America is
Yeah.
coming from, you know? It was just like, and then that airport scene, man, and that ending, I just some of the most iconic, strongest moments in this whole thing. This is Avengers 2.5. This is hardly even a Captain America movie.
Well, yeah, it
But
is. What I was so impressed about this film was that constantly throughout this ranking, I've noted in films that there was too much going on. You know, early on with like the Eternals or something like Age of Ultron or Iron Man 2, where I said that it's messy. There's too many moving pieces, and this is another case of that. Except it somehow manages to work. You've got introductions to 2 major players in Phase 3 and going forward, and T'Challa and that whole world, and of course Spider-Man. And you've also got all these characters that you liked before, as well as closing off the Captain America trilogy, and you've got stuff going on with Bucky going on in the film, and this feud with Iron Man, which is going to set up the rest of the phase. I think it's so fantastic. Like, it's the start of Phase 3. It sets up so much of the phase. It's such a fantastic, so many iconic moments, and I love they get everybody right in this film, even the lesser characters. I think there's just so many great moments. I think personally, as a film, it's more precise and better put together than Endgame as a film. But Endgame obviously was the more iconic sense at the moment.
speaking of which, number four, Endgame.
Okay, my fourth, I'm gonna appear really biased probably with this one. I've gone No Way Home in fourth.
I mean, it is at the end of the day, it is a preference thing. You said it.
Yeah, I'll talk about No Way Home. And for me, I was a massive fan of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. I think that maybe even the third one, which most people say the third one's terrible, but I know Ironic George Orman, I love that film. And the Amazing Spider-Man films, I also kind of get a bit of ironic enjoyment out of them. I don't think they're very good either, but they're so, like, I love those, seeing all these characters, and it wasn't even just like a fan service thing. They found a way to actually make them relevant to the story, and they found a way to develop Peter Parker's character in the sense that this was like the origin story. They do the big Spider-Man thing, which I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to spoil it, but they do so much, and they really mature, and it gives me faith that, like, okay, you may not have liked Spider-Man's character in an individual film before, but now is the origin, now is the start, and the ending, it was chilling to this day. I can't wait for the fourth Spider-Man film. And just seeing Tom Holland, Andrew Garfield, and Tobey Maguire on screen was just a big moment, along with all the villains. So,
It's well done. I'll tell you that much. It is really well done, and it really just comes down to like I just the Spider-Man character. I just like I said, I love the Avengers more, and that's the only reason. But if I'll tell you this, if I was a huge Spider-Man fan, like so many people are, it would have been top five easily. But Avengers Endgame, I just what can you say? I mean, this was a cinematic event, and you said it best. But I mean, I just think this movie holds up really well. And I think that like it really just like all these movies like this is what I'm talking about when you plan out your franchise correctly, you know? This is a perfect conclusion. And it felt like even the movies, even like we the Dark World in this movie. And even though the Dark World was kind of mid, you felt it was worthwhile now, and it wrapped up everything so beautifully, and it just was like I feel like you couldn't have had a better send off or a better conclusion than Endgame. It just like even though like I don't love time travel movies, I feel like this one did it right. I feel like the plots that we went back to we needed to get back to, and it
Yeah.
just I just feel like it is solid,
No, I do
perfectly
agree.
solid.
Okay, third, I have gone for the first Guardians of the Galaxy.
All right. I actually went for Thor Ragnarok.
Okay, I'll let you talk about that first, and if you haven't brought it up first.
I love Thor Ragnarok so much. It's so funny because I've always loved the Thor and Loki characters. And like I said, I hinted a little bit about this in the Dark World that if they had like teamed up and whatever, it probably would have been one of my favorites. They didn't, and it's one of my favorites. And it's not like that though. Everything else was brilliant. Everything else is like everything kept my interest. Everything was creative, everything was fun, everything was funny. Even Hella was a badass. And I feel like they just did this movie so well. And I just love the dynamics. I love the stakes. I love how this wasn't full on silly because they understand that Thor has gone through so much and he's still going through so much. And yet the humor works because it's not forced. They are just letting the characters be naturally funny. And it works so well. And if they make a Thor 5, they need to go back to their roots. And this is their root. It is not some serious dark movie because that's what they tried to do with the damn Dark World and Thor 1, and it didn't work. This is what you need to go back to. Go back to your roots. That's what I drop the
Yeah.
mic. That.
Okay, the Guardians of the Galaxy, and an interesting thing that you mentioned with the Eternals right at the start was that the Eternals, in terms of the comics, the characters that nobody cared for, and the Guardians weren't much different. Like when the
Hmm.
trailer for this came out, and when this was announced, okay, this is the project that we're doing. It's like, okay, this is a bit bizarre, isn't it? Like, what, why are we going for this one? You know what I mean? But it really worked. You built a team of heroes who were memorable, who were entertaining, who worked as a family, and they all had the independence, and they play off each other so well, and it just a great final. I have a few flaws with the first Guardians, which I have brought up in the past. Ronan is just a terrible villain, and Gamora's character, I've always not been the biggest Gamora fan, like I've said prior. But overall, it's just that I forget about that stuff because it's just so good. But there are two MCU films I think are slightly better.
See, number two, that's where I got the first Guardians. And I agree. I mean, like I said, I mean, I love the Guardians of the Galaxy so much. And this was just this if Black Panther got me into Marvel, this movie made me stay. And I like I said, I've had Guardians themed birthday parties. I love the Guardians so much. And this used to be my number one, but I understand it's not anymore. But I can't even I don't even know where to start. I just love it. And yeah, okay,
Yeah.
Ronan, he's not the best, but damn it, it doesn't affect my. If anything, I actually kind of enjoyed the fact that he was so bland and so like boring and stuff because then we wouldn't have gotten that hilarious dance battle at the end. I just this movie just was so well done. I have nothing to say about it. I love this movie. I love this
So
movie with all
that's
my
your
heart.
number two, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, my number two. You may have forgotten about this film because of how long ago you talked about it. It is Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and that's why I was kind of so surprised to see the placement that you had of it because I think
It's
this film, a lot of these films are very like popcorn. Like people always complain, oh, the MCU ruined cinema and they're not real films, and I don't agree with that sentiment. But I think this film is the closest as like a real, true, great drama in the sense that you take a guy who was very much like a it was very black and white when he was fighting. Like he's kind of it's good guys, bad guy, and he's thrown into a world where things are complicated and more complex, and that's interesting. Seeing that play off and seeing his kind of rapport with Sam and seeing how that kind of works off. I think it's such a grounded film. I think the stakes fantastic, and it is the Russo brothers, and I think they do a fantastic job. I just think as a standalone film, it's one of the best in the MCU, and it's just one that I always come back to. So I think you've heavily underestimated Winter Soldier, but maybe it's just a preference thing. But I think it's
Well,
just one of the strongest.
tell you what, good. I really agree with you when you said when it is true. I mean, like it is usually up until this point was always usually your standard. That's the bad guy. That's the hero. Then they're gonna fight. Well, what if the bad guy in your movie is your best friend? That's a very interesting point. I do need to. I need to give Winter Soldier another rewatch, even though it's probably not gonna be like my top 10 or anything. I do. From what I remember, it is such a solid movie, and I get it. Like maybe that's a little too high. I don't think it's better than Civil War. If you love the Captain America character and the Bucky character and just all that, I mean, it is definitely a very well done movie.
Yeah. Okay. And number one, I think process of elimination. That is one film that we both. Infinity War. I recently watched Wicked the other day in the cinema, and when I came
Oh,
out of that film, I realised that there's not many films you watch where the bad guys or the villain is kind of victorious, and it doesn't happen. You know, you always want to see the guy win and the bad guy lose, and it's every film. You know, storytelling 101. But then this is a rare example where the bad guy won, and he won in fantastic fashion because this is Thanos' film, the Infinity War. You know, it's very much like his story. We get his backstory, and it was so brilliantly done. Because unlike Kang, where your first two incarnation of him, he loses in Loki, and he loses it to Ants in the Ant-Man Quantumania. He built up for a decade. He comes in and he snapped half of the universe out of existence, and it's just such signifying. You've got such a massive cast as well. Endgame didn't have the massive cast. I think they were kind of clever to kind of keep it as just kind of the main Avengers and a few others. It They had all these parts and it worked. You bring the Guardians in, kind of the Wakanda people, you know, the cosmic kind of people with Doctor Strange, and you bring all this stuff. And I don't know how Secret Wars and Doomsday are gonna do it because it's even bigger now. I don't know how that's possibly gonna happen in a few years. But the Russos are back, and so is Robert Downey Jr. So we never know. But I just think this film did everything right. So yeah, I'll let you talk about it.
I mean, what can you even say? I mean, same thing. I mean, it's just like with all the characters, and it was like Endgame, where everything felt built up and everything felt warranted, and it was just this movie could have gone so bad, and it could have been so messy and so clunky, but it wasn't, and they knew how to handle all the characters. They knew where everybody was, and they knew how everybody was going to treat Thanos, and they knew how everybody was going to come and approach this huge, incredible threat. And everybody's in their peak. Everybody just felt like this movie is just so like I felt like such a beautiful like love letter, not love letter, but like just like all the characters they respected, all the stories they respected, and it came together because this is a universe, and they all came together brilliantly, and they all worked off each other so well. And I mean, even though Endgame is another solid movie, I just think Infinity War just was more just I think just a stronger movie. I think just a movie that
Yeah.
just every little bit of it is just I would consider this a perfect Marvel movie. Like this is what Marvel is. This is it.
Yeah, and I think we're in complete agreement, to be honest, with that being the best. And I think most people would put Infinity War at the top of their list. Yeah, that is the mold ranking. You know what, with this one, I don't think there was too much disagreement. I think the big thing was that you loved the Guardians films and I loved the Captain America films a lot more than the other person, which is kind of the trend there. But I think apart from that, we were quite fair.
Yeah, I mean, I really was trying to look at these movies because I have such bias and like very I'm very gatekeeping towards a lot of these movies. I was trying to be very fair here. And it's funny because some of these movies would probably be a lot lower, a lot higher if we were going fully based on my own opinion, but I was trying to be a little bit of objective. And I think we both had pretty decent rankings.
Yeah, so you'll probably see us in about 2 years' time after
Eh,
this one. Um, I don't know what we're gonna do next, John. It could be dumb Disney and Pixar, Marvel. That's kind of the main ones. It might be I don't know the Disney sequels next. I don't know.
maybe Marvel TV shows, which
Yeah,
that's gonna be
that's
an
a
interesting
potential one.
talk.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and we'll check the Guardians Holiday Special, which will probably put first.
I just watched it too with my family.
Of course you did. Okay, so we will see you lot soon. Thank you and goodbye.
Bye.